Does anybody remember March? Oh, how naive we were. When Roxy, her family, and I realized that we would need to postpone her bat mitzvah, scheduled for the Shabbat during Passover, we selected an August date, imagining that, like the flu, the coronavirus pandemic would be banished by summer's heat and light. I'm glad that we rescheduled, and I know that Roxy and her family are too. Roxy took advantage of the extra 4 months preparation. For Roxy and her family, 2 priorities mattered most. First, Roxy's achieving this sacred Jewish milestone with meaning and flair. And second, gathering the entire family together to celebrate. Yes, a Passover-appropriate celebration at Chow would have been nice. That's probably still happening, albeit with pasta, pizza, and garlic bread, but without all the friends that Roxy had hoped to join her. More importantly, Aunt Sophie and her family are here, a trip from New Jersey that would have been impossible in the crucible of COVID-19 there in the spring. One of the first questions to arise when we had to postpone celebrations like Roxy's was about the Torah portions. Would we ask teenagers to learn all new readings appropriate to the revised dates? Or would we be merciful, permitting Roxy and others in her situation to read the portions they had already prepared? For me, at least, the decision was clear. We would not pile yet another hardship on top of a celebrant who was already going to have to study for several extra months, and even then not going to have the festivities she had imagined. In Roxy's case, delaying from the Shabbat during Passover, there's a precedent. The Torah does not contemplate a global pandemic. However, it is concerned that some Israelites might not be able to celebrate Passover on the appointed date. A person in mourning during Passover, or one on a long journey, is permitted to celebrate second Passover, observing all the rituals of that holiday a month late. As Passover approached, some of my rabbinical colleagues asked if we should delay our congregational Passover observances by a month, observing a Passover Sheni, a second Passover. Most of us thought not. Though we couldn't gather for a congregational Seder, and we couldn't even celebrate at home with all the people we ordinarily would, the pandemic did not prevent us from observing Passover altogether. We could still refrain from eating leavened foods for 7 days. Many of us found new and creative ways to gather with loved ones for Passover, holding Seder by Zoom, often including family and friends who would not have been able to travel to observe even at a normal time. Moreover, we didn't think the pandemic would let up in time for a second Passover with Seder on May 8th. We were right about that. Let's not lose the important point, though. From the days of the Torah, our tradition has approached real-life circumstances with creativity, not rigidity. If people couldn't observe Passover 1 month, they could do so the next. We did celebrate that Passover, that festival in the spring, but we did not read its Torah portion. Tomorrow morning, Roxy will. As realities changed, even during the days of the Torah, so did the rules. In Parashat Re'eh, the portion read this Shabbat in synagogues around the world that don't have a rescheduled bat mitzvah, a different Passover discussion suggests adaptation to needs of the times. In Exodus, when the Israelites are first commanded to offer the Passover sacrifice, they're instructed to do so wherever they live. In this week's Torah portion, that gets changed. They're forbidden to offer the Passover sacrifice wherever they live, and they're told that doing so all over the place would lead to idolatry. Israelite leaders insisted that all Passover sacrifices now be brought to only one place, the temple in Jerusalem. Later, that temple was destroyed. Perhaps the Israelites could have gone back to sacrificing in their own homes, but our sages thought differently. They established the principle that our prayers, the offerings of our lips, would take the place of the offerings of crops and livestock. As we saw in this week's Torah portion, Deuteronomy had centralized Jewish worship in the one temple. Holy places like the Jerusalem temple were destroyed all the time in the ancient world. Typically, the annihilation of a sanctuary would also kill the god or gods worshipped there. The assumption was that the gods of the conquered temples were the gods of the conquering peoples were stronger than the gods of the obliterated temple. Our sages didn't see it that way. Even when they could not understand God's ways, they remained faithful. And they were creative. They established new ways to serve the God of Israel, a version of which we continue to practice today. This global pandemic has required creativity in every area of life. Many of us complain about spending hours on Zoom. I would certainly prefer to be officiating in a sanctuary full of Roxy's friends. And tonight, with Roxy's immediate family here, I'm with a veritable throng, an actual in-person minion of 10 Jewish adults. Most Friday nights, I'm at home with my computer, hoping that the dogs won't interrupt the service. And I know that many of you are alone with the computer during our services too. Another reality, though, is that some classes and meetings are ironically more meaningful and productive on Zoom than they ordinarily were in person. I've participated in some of the most creative rethinking of how we might worship and learn during a global pandemic. Eileen Hamilton has reimagined religious school in a way that will be engaging, fun, and interactive. Doubtless some of what she's done, with only this strange year in mind, will inform how we study in the future. Just this past week, Eileen, David Bowman, and I had a meeting with a potential guest artist to discuss Simchat Torah, which may even be more exciting via Zoom this year than it is in person in normal years. And that's saying a lot. Preparing for tonight's service, Richard Estelita, our ritual committee chair, removed the exquisite white Torah covers, which are for the High Holy Days, and restored the beautiful, colorful covers that we use the rest of the year. Now, you may wonder, why were the Torah scrolls dressed in white in August? Earlier this week, we began recording our High Holy Day services. Yes, I felt strange saying Shabbat Shalom and L'Shana Tova on a Sunday in August. Reading the prayers of the Ne'ilah concluding service for Yom Kippur on a full stomach was especially odd. The kavanah, though, the intention was there, to provide our congregation with the most meaningful High Holy Day experience, even if that required recording the words and music in the heat of summer. We may be grateful that our Judaism offers a long tradition of creative solutions, adapting even ancient rituals to new circumstances. Flexibility that has enabled an ancient religion to thrive in modernity. In our Reformed congregation, we don't have qualms about celebrating a bit of Passover, or Rosh Hashanah for that matter, in August. Instead, we celebrate Judaism's resilience as a religious tradition for all times, for all circumstances, for all seasons.